Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and it is time for another whiskey comparison video. And today I have lots of whiskey in front of me. Not only do I have a lot of whiskey in front of me, but it's all high proof whiskey. Everything here is 60% or higher. It is all Kentucky. Is it? Yeah, I think it's all Kentucky. Yeah, it's all Kentucky. Some barrel proofs here. Everything's 60% or higher. And I'm going to do a tasting on these. And thanks to Todd Ritter for sending these samples down my way. Some really interesting whiskey. Some I have never tasted before. One that I'm so infatuated with that I am hoping my local store can get me a bottle of it. But I have yet to hear from them. So I guess I'm going to have to contact them again. But I bought a sister product of it. And so I'm going to do a little tasting on that as well. I also have my notes, my tasting notes that I did on each of these. And because of the shortness of time here and trying to do so many whiskeys at once, the tasting event will be a little bit quick today. I'm going to jump straight in, and actually at the very beginning of this, I'm going to talk about the poll that I did where I asked how many of you guys like whiskeys over 100 proof versus under 100 proof. Most of you, 70%, said that you like over 100 proof. Personally, I get it. I will say that my sweet spot is probably 95 to 100 proof on a whiskey, on a bourbon. But I'm having my mind changed by tasting these. And on Scotch, it's got to be over 86%. 40%, it's just getting too watered down for me. And the high proof stuff is actually really, really interesting. So this first whiskey I'm smelling is STAGG JR. This is barrel proof, 8 to 9 years old, batch 13. All these are unique batches, so you're probably going to have a hard time finding the exact same one. There's definitely a bit of oakiness in all of these whiskeys because of their age. They're all older whiskeys. And so for me, when a bourbon starts getting over 10 years, it starts to take on a lot of oak, and I'm not a huge fan of oak. I like some, but I don't like it to dominate. I still like to remember what the original new make tasted like, because a lot of the interesting components, I think, come out of the new make. So balance for me is something that I tend to look for. There's a cinnamon in there. There's a mustiness from the oak a little bit. This is 64.2% alcohol on this one. And this is the same mash bill actually as Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare. So this is actually younger than Eagle Rare, the 10-year that I normally get. And so it doesn't have as much of the oakiness as a higher proof, so you'd think it would stand out a little bit more. My notes say cinnamon and the oakiness and a little nuttiness when you add water. I actually added a little water ahead of time on these. I don't know if it's something about high proof whiskeys in bourbons, but there's a little bit of mocha that comes through on there. There's a red hot cinnamon. There's some dark fruits in there. Brown sugar, peanut, toasted oak on the end. You taste some of that char in there. There's a little bit of an alcohol burn, but it's not really too heavy. And I'm looking at my notes to see what else I had. Bitter cocoa. And yeah, cinnamon. Definitely the cinnamon heat is there on that one. It's a very nice whiskey though. And I wanted to taste that one first because I tasted it last when I did my tastings the last time. And I have a feeling by the time I got through 5 different whiskeys that my taster wasn't doing so good. Everything was tasting good at that point. Well, the next one is the one that I absolutely fell in love with. And when I tasted it, I just thought this was one of the best whiskeys I'd ever tasted. And when I come back to it, it's really interesting. It has a warmth out of the glass. I always love that when there's something rising up out of the glass, and I think it comes from the oak. This is a 12-year-old whiskey. This is Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, and they do 3 different versions, or I think this year they're going to do 3 different releases. This is the second release, which is the B520. On the nose, there's that nuttiness to it. There's like a little bit of a, I get like a Nestle Quick smell. This has some fascinating smells in it. A little cinnamon toast in there. Does not disappoint. It is, if you like chocolate, especially dark chocolate, wow. And it ends on this little cherry note. But it lingers with this dark chocolate, mocha, marshmallow, little oakiness in there. But the oak is not dominant in this whiskey. Neither is the alcohol. Oh, and it just leaves this, man, if you like I like 86% dark chocolate. If you love that stuff, it's a little sweeter than that, but not much. I mean, it's really got that kind of slightly bitter cocoa, but a pleasant bitter, if that makes sense. The toffee is really strong in the middle of this. It's like a Snickers bar at one point. It's just a really, really good whiskey. So I'm hoping that I have it on order at my local shop. I hope that they get it for me, but that whiskey alone would change that is a barrel proof 12-year, changes my mind about everything I ever say about older bourbons. That is spot on. And that got me to go out in the meantime and ask everywhere, do you have the B520? No, but we have the C920, which is the newer version. And so I bought it, and I said, okay, fingers crossed that we get another mocha bomb out of this one. Well, the interesting thing on this is that there is mocha. The alcohol tickles the nose just a little bit more on this one. I've heard that the A series, which was the first one that came out this year, was a little more heavy on the alcohol. This one, the chocolate is still there on the nose, but the little bite of alcohol kind of gets in there. I actually wrote down what I thought when I tasted these the other day, the difference. And this one, actually, I had this more kind of an earthy kind of a smell to it, and the other one's a little more herbal. But the chocolate is definitely there. Really nice mouthfeel to it. It is definitely got that chocolate, has that little bit of cherry in it, got a nice finish. I don't think it's as aggressively chocolate as the B520 is, but I think I'm going to enjoy this. Yeah, that's a really nice one. And so 63.6% alcohol in the B520. This one, I have to do my math, 65, it's about 67. So yeah, this is a higher proof, so that kind of makes sense. And I bet you the more I add a little bit of water to that, the better and better it's going to get. But I mean, other flavors that I got in there, yeah, I think I covered most of them. A little underlying fruit in there, but definitely mocha bomb on the B520, and then a little more oaky. Got a weird kind of cheese thing I pulled out of the newer one, and a little bit of burnt toffee in my first tasting on that one without the water. So the first time I tasted it and took those notes, it was without water. This time I'm actually tasting them with water. All right, let's move along. I actually didn't pour this next one just because for the interest of time, and I am starting to run low on time. This one is the 4-Gate Kentucky Foundation Batch number 3. It is a 9-year and 9-month-old Kentucky Straight Bourbon. It is just below 60%, 59.9%. On the nose, I got light oak, cherry, kind of a funky, I call it Limburger cheese just because I couldn't put my finger on what kind of cheese it was, but it's an interesting kind of smell in there. And Flintstones vitamins. I have never pulled that flavor out of anything. The palate was giving me dark fruit and spice, brown sugar, a little baking spice on that, and the finish was black pepper, some heat, orange rind, biscuits, and a little sour cheese kind of thing in there. So interesting one on that one. This one is also by Forgate. This one is the Outer Loop Orbit number 2. And let me just tell you, you put your nose anywhere near this, and you are going to smell oranges. This is, Outer Loop Orbit is Orange Curaçao Gin finished whiskey. It is Kentucky Straight Bourbon, but I am telling you right now that the orange just absolutely dominates this. And then you get the botanicals from the gin. If you are a gin drinker, but you want to taste something that has a really nice heavy mouthfeel to it, that's it. There's a little bit of the oak that comes through on the end. There's a little bit of bitter on the finish. Yeah, I got hops out of this. It almost has like an IPA hoppiness to the finish. It is really interesting. It's very fruity, but I don't know if it'll appeal to the whiskey fan as much as it would appeal to the gin fan who might want to move over into trying out some whiskeys. So that was interesting. Sweet floral, toasted oak on the nose, circus peanut. That was one of my favorites. I was creamsicle on the palate. Everything was orange related, but I was getting some really interesting correlations between that orange. I was trying to really define that orange because it was so strong, both on the palate and also on the nose. Now the last one was a surprise to me. It was the first whiskey that I tried out of this whole set. It's Knob Creek. I'm not a huge fan of Knob Creek, although most of my relation on Knob Creek is to their rye, and to me their rye is kind of like a Canadian rye. It's almost syrupy in a way. It was a little too sweet for me. In fact, my Infinity bottle is a Knob Creek rye that I've been adding Rittenhouse, and I added some James E. Pepper 1776 to it. That's a dominant whiskey. It took the entire bottle over without even really putting a whole lot of it in there. So this one really was pleasant on the nose when I started with it. And I didn't know what these were when I was tasting them. So my notes are 100% honest. Whatever I wrote here, I wrote it was oaky with a little nostril burn. It's not too bad though. And it's not really heavy on the oak. I think my struggle was I couldn't really pull a particular smell out of it. Usually you start by trying to look for like vanilla or caramel. Maybe a little bit, but it's kind of like a sweet alcohol kind of smell. The toffee, the char from the oak. It is a really nice, pleasant, warm whiskey. Toffee and fruit. I have a little bit of yeastiness, I think it came on the end, that kind of that biscuit dough kind of a flavor. Finish goes to the caramel. Very nice aftertaste to it, actually. There's a little rye kind of kick to it that I pick up. It's really interesting. So, yeah, and there's a little bit of chocolate on the end, but I wonder if that's coming from my mocha bombs over here. So overall, for me, high proof, very interesting, and these, like I say, sold me, so maybe my opinion will change on over 100 proof whiskeys, but some really solid stuff here, and 70% of you guys said you like the higher proof stuff, so I'm going to keep looking, checking these things out. So Thanks for listening. Cheers. Slàinte mhath.